And welcome into the Paul Farrington Show, an instant reaction to the Dolphins-Chiefs. Chiefs manhandle Miami in a really cold, really unpleasant game to, I'm sure, play in. Probably fun to be at to some degree.
If you're
definitely
a Chiefs
not
fan.
fun to watch. Yeah, if you're a Chiefs fan, and definitely not fun to watch. It was not a good product on the television for us watching this game. Paul joined by Robert Ziggy Ziegler, who's back at UVA. And Ziggy, I actually watched this game with producer Zach, our producer, who is a big Dolphins fan. Dude was miserable the entire game. I felt so bad for him, waiting for something to happen because early on, it looks like Miami might be competent. They get the big touchdown to Tyreek, and you're just waiting. Drive after drive, the defense keeps holding Kansas City to field goals, and they're just never able to come through offensively. Tua looked uncomfortable the entire game. It played out pretty similarly to the way I expected and the way I said in our preview show. It's this exactly what you were expecting too?
I expected the Chiefs to win, I think, after a little bit more reflection. I did not expect the Dolphins offense to look this inept. I get that weather was a concern and it affected them, but there was only really one good play from the Dolphins offense all game, and it was a massive underthrow from Tua. I think this game sealed Tua's chances of getting an extension this offseason. I think it's unlikely. And as much as I hate reading into one game, the way that McDaniel completely gave up on Tua about halfway through the second quarter.
Yeah.
And you could see it, for instance, on the last real Dolphins play of the game on that 4th and 16, and you have him throwing a 6-yard slant. It's very clear this team over the course of this game has lost faith in Tua. And I didn't expect that.
Yeah, that's I agree with you. I expected the game to play out similarly to how it did, just not quite that bad of an offensive performance from Miami. We're hanging out watching the game, and Zach is begging for someone to show some emotion for just the slightest positivity coming out of that Dolphins offense. He couldn't get anything all night. And, in the Dolphins season as a whole, you look back at it and you say, what a disappointment to go from the number 1 or the number 2 seed to being on the road in a negative 15-degree game in Kansas City, where now everyone's questioning the starting quarterback's job moving forward. People aren't going to mention it that much, but that Titans game that we look back on when me and you were recording the Jordan Love Giants game, that's the game that I circle from the Dolphins standpoint of this is where you lost your season, because if you win that game, you're going to be the 2 seed, and you're probably going to beat the Steelers. You're probably going to go on to the divisional round, if not the AFC Championship game. Completely different outlook. That one game could change the trajectory of the Dolphins for the next 5 years, depending on what they do with Tua. And he really is the story of this game, because the struggles in big games all season have been extremely apparent to anyone watching. Go back and look. I have the QBRs, or the passer ratings, 62.7, 63.9 the past 2 weeks against the Bills and Chiefs in essentially must-win games for the Dolphins. Time after time, we see Tua struggle in these situations. So let me put you in the Dolphins front office this offseason. You're coming off a very successful year, but also a very disappointing year. You have a chance to extend Tua. Do you want to run this back? Do you really want to repeat this?
I don't think you can. You look at the Dolphins' record versus playoff teams this year. They were 1-6 with a negative 110-point differential. There's only one team in the entire NFL worse than that, and it's the team picking second overall, the Washington Commanders. So something has to change. And I don't think many people realize this. The Dolphins were really all in on this season, right? You look at their projected cap next year, they're $40 million over. So the Dolphins aren't in a position where they can easily add a lot of pieces, right? They can't go out and sign another big free agent. If a huge player wants out, say Max Crosby wants out of the Raiders, it's not like the Dolphins can go get him. So their options are somewhat limited. Now, there are things they can do to generate cap space. They can restructure guys. I think Emmanuel Ogbah is a clear-cut candidate. But your options for upgrading at quarterback are pretty limited. Really, The only players I can realistically see being available who were starters for at least part of the season were Kirk Cousins and Tannehill. Tannehill's not it. The Dolphins already tried that. So really that leaves you with only two choices. You can trade with the Vikings for Kirk Cousins. And I think the Vikings, if the draft capital is right, would be willing to move on. You try and recreate some of that Stafford McVay magic in Miami. Yeah. Or you can move up, try and draft a quarterback, give up probably similar draft capital as you need from Kirk, and try and keep this window open for another year or two.
And it's tough because do you really want to bring in Kirk Cousins off an Achilles injury? I think he'll be fine. Kirk's not the most mobile quarterback in the world to begin with. It's much more talent with his arm that you're bringing in than any sort of functionality from his legs. So I actually like that move from Miami. If the draft compensation in return to Minnesota was not too high, like would you give a first rounder to Minnesota for Kirk Cousins? Because I think he'd light it up in that offense.
I'd give one, but I think you'd have to, right? Because if you're the Vikings, you're sitting back here. We're claiming our stats as a Vikings podcast for a minute.
Yeah, right.
As you're the Vikings, you're sitting back here and saying, look, we're in a great position to trade up and draft a rookie quarterback. Let's do what Green Bay did. Let's have him sit behind Kirk Cousins for a year, maybe two. Unless the rookie really shows out, we can continue being competitive. The Vikings weren't a terrible team this year. They weren't great, but they weren't awful. And we'll just relax and have a good time, right? The Vikings just don't seem to be in any hurry to move off Kirk Cousins. The team loves him. The fans love him.
Yeah. No, he's awesome. He's a great quarterback, great teammate, great leader. Perfect face of a franchise to have. It would be tough to move on from him. If Miami gave a first round pick, though, it does fit in nicely with our, I don't want to call it a complete rebuild, but reload at least. And you hope you get a CJ Stroud type of guy. We see what he could do to a franchise in one season. But that's also got to be on Miami's mind because they're in a similar situation to Minnesota. If anything, honestly, Miami's a more talented team. They're going to be bringing back a lot of superstar players. You saw the list of injured guys tonight, especially on defense, who weren't to go. If you get the quarterback right, this Miami team is as talented as anyone. When it comes to the draft, though, you would rather draft a quarterback than bring back Tua? Like Tua's gone for you?
So they've got Tua on the 5th-year option this year. He's at $23 million a year, and then he's out. You cannot extend Tua after this unless he wants a bottom-of-the-barrel deal. Because the fact is, set aside whether you think Tua is good or not. That's not what's important. What's important is whether the head coach believes in Tua. And we've seen for a couple of years now, McDaniel go to bat for Tua, right? Tua has been his guy, and he's made the offense pretty good around him. We saw the results this year. Over the course of this season, McDaniel lost faith in him. And you don't want a situation like we saw what the Rams did with Sean McVay. If they had let Jared Goff stay there instead of going out and getting a guy who they believed in and thought could do well, the Rams would not have won a Super Bowl. There's no question about it. So you have to get someone he believes in. That's not going to be Tua.
I don't want to say that Brian Daboll didn't believe in Daniel Jones after last season, but you can find yourself in a situation similar to the Giants. I think Tua is better than Daniel Jones. But if you go and give Tua a big contract, doesn't have to be record setting or anything like that. But if you commit to Tua long term, first off, let me make it clear. I think Tua is a very good quarterback. He has his moments. He puts up good numbers. He'll win you games you're supposed to win. It's about winning that game that matters. Winning the game that CJ Stroud came in and dominated today. Tua often fails in those situations. Do you want to attach yourself to someone like that for 3 or 4 years? That's where it sounds like you're saying, I'm done with this. I need to move on. The tough part about that situation, and where I could see all Dolphins fans getting a little shaky, is that if you miss on that draft pick, now you have a team with Jalen Ramsey, with Tyreek Hill, guys who are not getting any younger. The Dolphins are in a win now mode with a quarterback they're not confident can win now. It's not an envious situation to be in despite all the talent. So if you had to rank it 1, 2, 3, Tua, Kirk, draft a quarterback, hope you nail it. How would you lay that out?
So I think this year the Texans are a good proof of concept that if your rookie quarterback hits and hits well, your team can be successful and make a run on the playoffs. I'm not saying that's a guarantee. I'm not saying it's even likely, but it's a possibility. I think number one has to be Kirk. Kirk put together the best season of his career this year, per game, at least in the games he was playing. I'm not sure you're going to see exactly that Kirk Cousins again, but you don't need to. right? Kirk can regress a little and the offensive system can do some lifting.
I don't want to let him go. I love Kirk.
But this would be the best situation of his career. I mean, you know how much Shanahan loved him, right? He fits in those Shanahan offenses extremely well.
He would be great in Miami.
So I think that's number one. Number two, the rookie quarterback for the upside. Is it particularly likely that, say, Jaden Daniels is going to turn in and put in a season like CJ Stroud? No. But as much as it hurts to go into the mystery box, I think you've got a lot more upside there.
Do the Dolphins have anyone's pick, Ziggy? I'm trying to, I don't even know if they can make a move up.
You can trade future picks. I mean, look, there are teams picking in the top 8, top 10 of the NFL draft that don't want a quarterback. You can move up with them. I'm not saying it's exciting, but if you're willing to trade multiple first round picks, can make it work.
It's a lot to put on the line.
Well, sure, but you're trading up for a rookie quarterback. You have to do that anyway if you're looking for the quarterback of the future, right? You have to take risks.
It's going to, no matter what the Dolphins do, it's going to be risky.
Yeah, I mean, you have the risk of Kirk Cousins not being good enough, and now you're caught up with an aged quarterback. You have the risk of the rookie not panning out. And you have the risk of Tua not dramatically improving this offseason and becoming the kind of guy who can lead a team to a Super Bowl. I'll tell you what I think is the least likely of those. Tua turning into that guy and winning the Dolphins a Super Bowl. He's got everything in the world working for him, and it's not enough.
Poor Tua, poor Dolphins fans. 8 weeks ago, 9 weeks ago, you're sitting
MVP
here
front runner,
thinking he might win the MVP, and now it looks like he might not even come back next year. Real quick on the Chiefs, because after all, they did win this game here. Am I confident in them? No. But do I think this team is really tough and natural winners? Absolutely. Next week, they're probably going to Buffalo. We're assuming the Bills will beat the Steelers. Did you see the weather, by the way? I don't know if you saw the clips of Buffalo right now. Oh my God, playing in that game, it was never going to happen. Just getting there for fans would have been extremely dangerous, but it would have been really fun to watch at 60 mile per hour winds. You know you can't do it, but Chiefs are probably going to go to Buffalo. You can't count them out. As long as Patrick Mahomes is there, as long as that defense is playing the way it did, this team has a shot. What was the number you were telling me about Snead?
Yeah, so here's an incredible stat from L'Jarius Sneed. The Chiefs played the Dolphins twice this year. And combined across both those games, he gave up 1 reception to Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's had an incredible season. I think it might be the biggest all-pro snub in the NFL this year is the fact that L'Jarius Sneed didn't get all-pro. But setting that aside, the fact is, as you said, the Chiefs' defense is very good. And the weather favored them this game. That's true. Pacheco, of course, really excellent inside runner.
Tough runner. Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was a snowplow today, right? But the Chiefs are a good team. They've got the best quarterback in football. They've got a top 5 defense. They've got Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce. That might just be enough. Because again, for all of we talked about how every team except arguably the Ravens has been up and down. You could get bad Josh Allen. Then suddenly you're in the championship. There's a run here for the Chiefs.
If you're playing against Kansas City, all fans of other teams are going to be saying, look at how they've been all season long. The offensive struggles have been there. Sure, the defense is good, but they can't get anything going. Tell me how you feel about that when it's 20-17 and Patrick Mahomes has the ball at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, Patrick Mahomes has more playoff wins than Aaron Rodgers, right? This guy knows how to win in the postseason, and he does it every single freaking.
And you see the fire. That's what the one thing Zach was talking about the entire game. He kept saying, "Where's the passion on this Dolphins team?" And there was a handful of guys who would make a play and look like they even wanted to be there. The Chiefs all game. Look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Look at Pacheco. Look at these guys putting their bodies on the line in big time game. That's what you're going to get from the Chiefs. You're going to see them take it up another level in the playoffs. I thought you saw that tonight. They didn't set the world on fire on offense, but they show up and they expect to win. And that means something. Come playoff time, going to Buffalo, they've owned the Bills in the playoffs. There's a mental side to this thing too here. And the Chiefs aren't afraid of anybody. So I agree with you. There's definitely a run. And the quarterback play you said it right before we started. Lamar, Stroud, Mahomes, likely Josh Allen in the second round here in the AFC. And we are really being treated to great football. And honestly, to bring it full circle here, that can be a message for the Dolphins. Look at who's left. Four of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, in my opinion, are playing. So you need a stud to get to advance in the AFC. Any closing thoughts before we wrap up this Dolphins-Chiefs reaction?
As much as we focused on the Dolphins this game and their struggles, I do think there are a lot of positive takeaways from the Chiefs. The fact is this defense has shown consistently that they can play with the best teams in the NFL. So assuming that Buffalo does win, assuming we get the Chiefs going to Buffalo, that's just going to be so much fun. Awesome. You know, we've seen how this has played out with the Bills going into Arrowhead and the heartbreak that's come there. I'd be so excited to watch the Bills break that curse in their own building.
Hey, Patrick Mahomes' first road playoff game too. It'll be fun to see that in Buffalo when we've seen that matchup every single time. Yeah, we've never seen Patrick Mahomes go on the road. Not that I'm worried he can't perform there, but you know, it's different when you're playing in Arrowhead with those, you know, the great home field advantage. I'm excited for that. So we got a lot to look forward to tomorrow. Some more great games. Packers and Cowboys. We'll be doing an instant reaction to that for all the Packers fans who are watching this right now. And then Lions, Rams. I think tomorrow's the best slate of games that we have. Hopefully they're a little bit more competitive than what we saw today. But for Ziggy, Paul, thanks for listening. We appreciate all the support we've been getting recently. And, you know, we're going to keep pushing out as much content as we can throughout the playoffs. We'll see you tomorrow.